My name's Tommy Harte, and I sing in a band called Broken Vow. We're from New England in the United States of America. It was very I think I was 17 or 18 when we started the band, so it was very first hardcore band vibes, kind of figuring it out, stumbling through stuff, putting influences together that didn't make sense being together, which I think is exemplified by, we named the band by in our original guitarist's house. We were all scrolling through our Spotify, and Harrison, our other guitarist who's still in the band today, is on Jane Doe by Converge, and he sees the song The Broken Vow. He goes, "What about Broken Vow?" And we were so tired of thinking about it at that point that we just said, fuck it, I guess. It's better than anything else we've thought of. So it was pretty random. We're mainly influenced by 90s bands and bands that kind of carried that sound forward. Heavier metallic stuff as we've progressed as a band. Lyrically, I'm influenced a lot by those early Bridge 9 bands that were the first bands that I would have heard that were like real hardcore bands, because I was kind of becoming political at the time, and it felt like, I remember the summer before I found hardcore, I was really starting to have like political revelations of my town's very liberal and very nice, but I want to go farther than that. Like, I think the solution lies outside of that. And then, you hear a band like Verse or a band like Have Heart. And then later on, bands like Indecision and Earth Crisis. And then now I'm into a lot of crust bands like Tragedy. Hearing those kinds of political lyrics really inspires me to push forward in terms of my own ideology. And I would just name pretty much every band like that. I think they're very important to me when it comes to lyrics. And musically, it's just to take everything 90s you can and throw it in a pot, stir it up on low heat. We just were very stoked on hardcore, and it was my first hardcore band, and it felt, I think now there's kind of this narrative that the only bands that are kind of getting put on for are bands of people who have been in hardcore for a long time. And for me, I felt that the best way I could get involved with hardcore at first was to start a band, because I've always been into music and been into playing music. So it seemed very natural to me. And I just wanted to channel these inspirations that I was seeing. And it's been a way that, someone says, "Oh, you guys sound like this band." And I'm like, "Yeah, we totally sound like that band, but I've never heard them." So it's been a way for me to educate myself over time. And it's been a vehicle for me to grow inside of hardcore. And I don't think there was really we didn't have some grand idea before. We just wanted to play hardcore music, and we wanted to make music that sounded like the bands we loved and the bands that we were listening to at the time. And then now I'm in fucking Germany. So it's pretty cool.
If you're outside, come inside. If you're in the back, move up to the front. This is this band's last time ever playing in Germany. This is our final German gig. We're a band called Broken Vow. We're from New England. Move on! Move on! Complete the
first exposure to heavy music was probably Slipknot when I was in middle school. And I remember I was in a band of guys who, I'm like 12 years old at this point, and I'm in a band of guys who were into like Blink-182, Green Day and stuff. And I showed them the Psychosocial music video, and the guitarist, Jacob, still a good friend of mine, said that he was too scared to play something like that. And I think that's when I had that moment of, oh, I like this. This like makes me different than everybody else. And definitely always liked that feeling. So that was definitely the beginning of the end for me. For that Slipknot record, I was late to it just because like it had come out in 2008 and I was probably getting into that around 2012, 2013. So it had been a while either way. It would probably be this local band from Western Mass called Crafter. They're a melodic hardcore band in the style of like Verse, Have Heart, Sinking Ships, that kind of thing. And their singer was a substitute teacher at my school. And I was talking about like metal and stuff with the kids at my table in math. And he said, oh, you're into that like metal stuff? Let me show you something cool. And of course he showed me his own band. So that was probably the first like real hardcore band I heard. Well, it was interesting for me because I'm from a region of Massachusetts that's pretty far away from other places and now has a very good scene and historically has had a very good scene. But I grew up in kind of a dark time for it where there weren't a bunch of shows happening. There weren't a bunch of new bands coming out. So I kind of had to go elsewhere for hardcore, and I ended up becoming more a part of the Connecticut scene at first, which is like how I ended up starting Broken Vow. But then kind of after that, I didn't realize at the time that if there are no shows going on, you have to book your own shows. And once I realized that, I went back and started booking my own shows and not to take too much credit, but since then it's been on the up and up and the scene's been a lot better. I think there were things going on at the time that younger people were doing in tandem with what me and my friends were doing that kind of came together and made a little scene explosion. But for me, it's interesting because I was always an outlier in the scene. I wasn't like from the same places exactly as everybody. And it can get very regional in New England, even though I was only from an hour and a half away. It's like I'm not from the same place. And I had to either make that clear or confuse people and make them angry. So, but I think the biggest thing the biggest role that my local scene in Western Mass played for me was realizing that you get what you give in hardcore, you know, because I wasn't giving anything back to it. I was just trying to find a place to go to shows anywhere when I was a kid. And then once I had a little more knowledge about it, I came back and I gave a lot to the scene and I ended up getting a lot out of it. So I think that was definitely the biggest lesson that my local scene has taught me.
Propaganda of the Dean! Everybody jump! Defenseless Broken Vow. Take some steps up. Let's go, Mannheim.
Definitely not. Like I said, I think it's been one of the things, I mean, the band's coming to an end pretty soon, and one of the things I've been reflecting on a lot, being very thankful for, is that I've kind of gotten to figure it out over the course of the band. And the band, as much as it's been an artistic vehicle, it's been a vehicle for me to figure out. I think very differently than I did when I started the band. And a lot of the lyrics that I wrote at the beginning of the band, I look back on it and I go, I don't really think if I feel the same way as that anymore in certain ways. In certain ways I do. But I think the Anthropocene is really special to me, and the package of it is really special to me, especially the artwork, which our friend Sim Morales did. They're a very talented artist from Ohio. I think that whole thing is very special to me because it feels like for a long time in the band, we were kind of stabbing in the dark and didn't really know what we wanted. And that record feels like everything coalesced into the right place and made something consistent and actually meaningful instead of just like my first hardcore demo, my first hardcore 7-inch. It felt like you said. I appreciate you saying that because I feel that way too, that it actually comes together as something. And I think the beautiful thing is that wasn't in mind at the beginning of the band. You know, we didn't have a grand goal. We just wanted to play hardcore music. And I feel very proud that we started at that beginning point and we ended up making something that I felt was very full and complete. The concept of the Anthropocene was something that I came across pretty late into being into this sort of thing. And ever since that kind of political awakening that I talked about, I've felt very drawn to like environmental and human versus nature relations and conflict. And when I was writing the lyrics for Anthropocene, I was doing some online classes for my geography degree. And I was introduced to the topic of the Anthropocene when I was doing those classes while I was writing the lyrics, waiting for the record to come out. So it kind of, when I found out about the Anthropocene, I was sort of like, oh, this is this thing that I've been thinking about this whole time, but I didn't know anybody else was thinking about it. And I didn't know there was a word for it. So it felt like this divine intervention. And we've caught a lot of flack for using big words in our songs. I think some people find it a little alienating. And we joke about that a lot as a band. So when I told them that I wanted the title to be that, I was like, you guys are going to hate me. But we can't just call it like Bleeding Earth or something. We gotta call it Anthropocene. And I'm really fascinated by the idea that we as one species can, under some debate, our impact on the earth is the single biggest event on the geologic scale right now. And to me, that puts it in perspective a lot. And I want something as the title of the album that sparks curiosity, because one thing I don't like is when hardcore is very surface level and doesn't prompt you to explore anything outside or even deeper into hardcore itself. So as much as the title I felt could maybe be alienating to someone who just wants a surface level thing, I was hoping that people would be curious about it, and maybe if they liked the record and they liked what I had to say, then maybe they would say, well, what's the Anthropocene? I want to learn some more about that. So creating that curiosity, and I thought it summed up what I was talking about very well. I think it's inherently political, and I think even a band that doesn't have a political message that exists in the space of hardcore is part of a political thing that exists outside of the mainstream music industry and exists outside of the mainstream in general. But I think we're pushing more and more towards hardcore being mainstream right now, and that happens. You know what I mean? I mean, it's happened before, and it'll probably dip and not happen as much and then happen again, and that's okay. But I think that it's kind of lost on certain people how inherently political it is. And in the US right now, I think it's we're seeing this interesting thing where it feels a little cringe to be political and like, oh, why are you lecturing me? Why are you shoving your like idea in my face? And I think that attitude, to me, feels inherently anti-hardcore because, you know, you don't have to agree with everything someone's saying. You could think that it's more nuanced. You could flat out disagree, but I believe that hardcore is a place where everybody should be allowed to speak their mind as long as it's not hateful. And I think that that's something that's being lost a little bit. Would I say it has to be political? No. I think that as long as you're expressing yourself and doing it genuinely, then that's hardcore as fuck. But I would personally like to see more bands coming out pushing a message, because I think with hardcore bigger than it's ever been and the world at large in a worsening state in pretty much everything, you know, there's genocides going on, the climate's deteriorating, so many governments are turning to fascism, and it seems that this root of political outspokenness that's existed in hardcore for a long time isn't rising to the occasion. So I'm just curious as to why that isn't happening more, and would like to see it happen more.
This next song is about looking at the world around you. It's about looking at the things that are going on that make you feel hopeless, that make you feel like everything is broken, that make you feel as if there's no possible way that one person's actions could change anything, even someone's mind. And I don't subscribe to that philosophy, because I believe that what the individual thinks matters. And I believe that change starts with one person. And I see a whole lot more than one person here. And I believe that if you accept defeat, if you let someone else say, oh, it doesn't matter what you care about. It doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what you believe. If you let them win, then you're one less person who is fighting on the side of what's right and is fighting on the side of truth. And this band is going away, but the members of this band will continue to fight for the truth. This song's going out to the Palestinian people who are fighting against their Israeli oppressors. If they won't give up, you have no fucking excuse to give up. This song's called 1.5. Don't stop! Boom, 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 boom! Right away! But I swear pressing day! This one of freedom, such a precious sword! I got the child of this corrosion! That my promotion is haunted! I can't let things carry on! Side to side! That make things fire! Raise with all your light! Resurrect the nation!
Out to us. Sam's been saying nice things about the band for a very long time. He reached out to us actually at the beginning of 2022, I think. So it was a very long time in the works, and we had some other releases planned for that year. But then in the beginning of 23, we went into the studio to do the LP with him. And yeah, he was great. He just seemed to want to put on for the band, and he has. So it's been a fruitful collaboration, and I think a band like us benefits a lot from being on that label because we work very hard of our own accord. You know, it's very very DIY spirit, and it's great to have that backing behind us. You know, one thing that we have emphasized as a band is that we want to work with people who want to work with us, and we've never really too much gone barking up any trees. We've mostly said, you know, if this person wants to work with us, if this label, this agent wants to work with us, well, let's see what they're about. And then if it's good, sure. And I think Avocado was one of those things where we were like, Avocado seems like they're the best European booking agency. We were hearing all this lore about all these great tours that they've done. And then when they finally hit us up, we said, awesome, like, let's do it. Let's finally go to Europe. And we've been proven right. Very much so in our expectations of it. It's been a really amazing tour so far, and it's a really special treat to get to play hardcore music across an entire ocean. So, our guitarist Evan has toured in Europe a few times before with other bands filling in, and so he gave us some basic stuff, you know, like, oh, they're gonna ask for encores, they're gonna this, and that's proved pretty accurate, but. For me, European hardcore is a big influence. A lot of people, when they first get into hardcore, they go deep on like DC hardcore or Youth Crew or whatever, Victory Records stuff. But I was really, really into Good Life and the Hate 1000 bands. And that was my first kind of obsession. Like, I need to find every band like that. Oh my God, what's this Congress demo from? And so European hardcore is... Europe is kind of a mecca for me, and you know, you even farther east, you have bands like Maroon and the Italian Hate 1000 bands that really made an impact on me. And for me, I was stoked because a lot of that influence has seeped into Broken Vow, especially on the last record. So I think in a lot of ways, the Broken Vow sound is an homage to a lot of the old European hardcore of the 90s and early 2000s, and I was mainly just excited to go play that hardcore in Europe. You know what I mean? So I was, maybe my expectation was that everybody would be straight out of the Hate 1000 documentary, but I think I knew that was unrealistic. But I don't know. I had good expectations, and they've been blown out of the water, even though they were already good. There's something very special about finding the band that is from the area that you're from, doing the sound that you want to hear. I think that my good friend Nick once said, I think about this all the time. I don't know if he thinks about this at all, but he said that the platonic ideal of liking music is being into the genre or style that you like, and then everything from your hometown. So, and for you, that could be Germany. For me, that could be all of Massachusetts. But it's very special when you find a band like, I've been talking to everyone about Maroon out here. I was talking to that band Divine Sentence yesterday, and I was like, a commitment for life. So it's awesome to hear that you had that experience with it. I think I've noticed definitely, I'm surprised by how similar it is. I feel like people in the USA sometimes like to pretend it's a whole different world in Europe than it is back home. But the main big difference that I've noticed is that right now in America, I think, and this isn't a bad thing, but it is something that I'm maybe less into, is that I don't think there's much of a space for message in hardcore and hardcore bands that have a lot of ideas behind what they're saying. I think a lot of people want to have fun and they want to mosh and they want to be silly, and that's awesome. So do I. But to me, what's really important about hardcore is the meaning behind the words that the people on stage are saying and carrying that meaning into the rest of your life outside of hardcore. And it's great to have an outlet. It's great to go crazy and have a social circle of people who understand you. But I think it's also important to be real and to speak about the things you care about and to stand up for the things that you think are worth standing up for. And I've noticed that in Europe, it feels like the per capita more bands are doing that than in the States. And I really, really enjoy that. It's energy that I really enjoy being around. I mean, even our friends in No Relief, who we've been on tour with, they're not an outwardly political or message-based band, but they're still much more open to that stuff than someone in America might be. And I really like that. I've been, I wouldn't say I wasn't expecting it, but I've been pleasantly surprised by how prevalent that is.
We got 2 more songs left.
As much as I would like to continue being a force to push the message, and we will continue to be a force to push the message as individuals, and continue to take up that space in hardcore. One of the things I hate the most is when a band sticks around too long, and I think one of the things that's very special to hardcore about me is how much impact a band can have in a short amount of time. And not to feel ostentatious about how important I believe my band's been, which I don't think is very important. I still think it behooves us to not overstay our welcome And I think if you bow out too early, it's better than bowing out too late. And if this is too early, so be it. You know what I mean? I'm glad to have been able to put what I've put out into the world, and now there's other stuff that all of us need to focus on in our own lives. And it's been a really great privilege, and I'm really excited to stay friends with those people instead of pushing a band into the ground and ruining all of our friendships, which I also see happen a lot. So, we'll still be talking to each other in the group chat, for years to come. And to give a real answer, it's, we just all have too much going on in our lives to justify giving this band the time commitment that it deserves. And why push it any farther than that, I think it's just my friendships with the people who are in the band, with Max and Olin and Harrison and Evan, and all the people specifically in the other bands we've toured in, and the friendships we've made through that. A band like No Relief, or we've toured with so many people. Divine Right back in the States, our friends in Exide, our friends in a band called Take It to Heart that has since broken up. Our friends in Terrena, just every band we've gotten to meet, go on tour with, share the stage with, and everyone who's helped us out along the way. And specifically this cat who's just wandered into the studio. I will remember this for the rest of my life. Just the friendships and the people you get to meet. It's amazing. And I've got a lot of love for all the people I've met through this band.
This song is the second to last song we're gonna play tonight. And it's about what to have hope in the world. And it's about what to leave behind hope in. And I have a lot of hope in spaces like these that promote people expressing themselves and getting energy out and negative energy out in a safe atmosphere, in a safe environment. And I've personally found that using this space to get that energy out has made me a better person in my life outside of hardcore. And this song is about exactly that. It's about the world outside of hardcore. It's about what happens when the lights go out, we're sweeping the floors, you guys are all heading home. It's about what you do after these shows. The spirit that you carry from these shows into the outside world, and how that benefits the world, and how hardcore and an individual like every single one of you taking what you learned from here and applying that to your life and being a better person and being a better member of your community, how that fucking matters, and how hardcore fucking matters because of it. We got 2 more songs and then we're gonna get out of your hair. This song's called No More Air. I want to see everybody going side to side. Myself remember, you're right, you're right. I want to say, but I forgot to lie. I exist, and you make my side. I keep neglecting the world. What the hell are you? And you got it all. t-shirts and sweatshirts over there. We've been Broken Vow from New England in the United States. Thank you, Mannheim.
It's definitely very important to remember that you have to give in order to get back. But I think that maybe right now people are too focused on getting back and will maybe give just in order to get back. And for me personally, I believe that giving to hardcore should be its own reward, and participating in a positive way and making stuff happen in your local scene and creating art that actively serves to forward the hardcore canon in a positive direction should be its own reward. And you don't need anything to measure that success, because that's the music industry. You know, you don't need ticket sales, you don't need merch sales, you don't need financial success. You just if you're doing something positively and genuinely, then it will be its own reward. And if it doesn't feel rewarding, you probably aren't doing it positively and genuinely. So do stuff for the sake of doing it, and do stuff because you believe in it, not because you think you're going to get rewarded for it.